the learning curve wasn't as big as I thought, and I really could do this. It was just all these different forms of this superpower I never knew I had because I'd never heard anyone say it before, that I brought some kind of trust and calm and chill to this process that can be pretty scary, which is getting on camera. So I say all that to say, I found my third thing that I can give advice on and feel really, really comfortable about it. And that is talk about what you're trying to do. Tell people what you're working on. Tell people your ideas, and don't be afraid that they don't come to fruition, because all you're doing is just planting seeds.
I'm Junaid Ahmed, host of Hacks and Hobbies podcast and a digital presence advisor at HumbleZone. This episode is brought to you by Home Studio Mastery. I launched a consultation and course program to help podcasters and course creators to create a space in their homes that will reduce the friction of creating content and appearing their best when showing up on camera. The pandemic gave us a lot of issues, but this one is here to stay. We're now so much closer to our audience thanks to video becoming more popular and affordable. I help guide folks who want to create Hollywood-worthy studios to not only capture great content, but also build more confidence, more authority, and be more comfortable in front of the camera. If I can do it, you can too. And with my help, you can do it faster. So if you'd like to learn more, visit homestudiomastery.com and how you too can create a home studio that brings out your personality, professionalism, and possibilities. Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life, who want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. Today we get to speak with Dan Bennett. He was born and raised in the gritty city of Flint, Michigan, and now resides in Fort Worth, Texas. He's the founder of 1 Minute Media, a company that empowers entrepreneurs and startups to learn to look and sound great on camera through coursework and private community membership. Dan has had the privilege to work with some amazing clients like Harley Davidson, Hasbro, Nerf, Mercury Marine, Bud Light, Camaro, and many more. I cannot wait for you to listen to this episode as we dig in to Dan's origin story. So let's jump in. Dan, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I can concur all the SPI words that you just said. It is super cool. There's a lot of talented people in there. And also, people like us get to meet each other and chop it up over the things we love. So happy to be here.
Fantastic. And you're absolutely right. You know, it's when you find like-minded people that are on the same wavelength as yourself, it's like, oh my God, why have I not met you before, right? So it's really fantastic that we get to meet and have these conversations.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it does feel like that. It feels like almost a homecoming, even though you're meeting new people. So I dig it.
It's amazing. I was in LA, and I met this gentleman over Reddit a couple of years ago, and he's like, "Oh, come on down. You're a podcaster. I want to invite you to be a guest." I'm like, "Well, let's do virtual." It's like, "No, I want you to come in the studio." I'm like, okay. So last month I was traveling to California. I was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in town." He's like, "All right, perfect. Come down this day." So I show up and we start talking. He's like, "All right, have a seat right here. I've got the cameras all set up. Let's chat." So we started talking, and then there was a point in the conversation where he was like, "Tell me about yourself." So I was like, "Well, I grew up in blah, 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 but I came to the States when I was 19. He's like, "Oh, that's cool. I'm 19 right now." I was like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm 19 years old, and I've been running this podcast studio for 3 years." I'm like, "Dude, that's epic." And as the conversation went on, he was like, "It's almost like talking to Spider-Man on the metaverse, in the movie." You get to talk to other Spider-Man, Spideys, and the same issues we face.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's serendipity is a hard thing not to kind of believe in a little bit, at least.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah.
100%. So, Dan, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. We've been just talking to each other, and I want to share with the audience who you are, where you come from, and what is your expertise and what you bring to the world.
Yeah, I'll try and high level it as much as possible to leave
Yeah.
some space for us to break it down. Um, so I'm definitely in the category of accidental entrepreneur. I had feelings, as I was like getting late teens, early 20s and stuff like that. But I didn't know what they were until later on. So I was really good at drafting in high school. I had a teacher who's like, "Hey, you're good at this. You should go to school for it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So had my first drafting job before I even went to college, went after an engineering degree, got some of those positions before I even got a degree. And about 3/4 of the way through that degree, I was having a conversation with my professor at the time, and accidentally kind of found out that we were making about the same money, and he had the degree I was going after. And I was already on my way out of that industry anyway, but that was kind of the final straw. So a little later in life than people usually do, I was finding myself in my early 20s. And I was in a band that toured, played music all over the country,
Nice.
and was doing a pretty good job at keeping us afloat. And what I didn't know was happening was entrepreneurship, right? So I handled our merchandise, our design, our website, I'm going to date myself, our MySpace page, our booking, our management, all the stuff, and finding that I kind of loved it. So as I left engineering, I was interacting with a apparel printer, and the guy that owned it was like, "Hey, you guys sell a lot of t-shirts. How do you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's the only way that we can keep going. So we're really focused on merch and creating great t-shirts, doing one-off runs. So those 25 are the only ones that exist, stuff like that." And he's like, "Well, hey, if you play with a lot of other bands, and you bring in an order from one of them, I'll give you 15% off the top." And I'm like, "Got it." So next weekend I come with a couple extra orders, and he's like, "Holy crap," and it just grew from there. And what I started to find was I was able to help other people tell their stories through my creative skill set. And that was the part of engineering I never got to do. I was good at drafting in high school because we were creating from scratch all the time. In my engineering career, all we ever did was revise old drawings. I never
Yeah.
created anything from scratch. And I was getting to do that at this point. And after about 6 or 8 months of those visits, I walked in one day and he's like, "Hey, you want a job?" And I'm like, "Actually, I quit my career a while back and I wouldn't mind that." And he knew I was trying to find myself, and I ended up running the art department for a large apparel printer for a while and cut my teeth on design even further, as well as I had the space to have what we now know as side hustles, and do work for other bands and music festivals and all these things, and really kind of find my way as someone who helps others tell stories for a living. So that's kind of the high level from then till now.
Dude, I absolutely love that, and helping others tell their stories through what you love to do. It's like when we get to help others with our true genius, it just it's just like a mind blown experience every single time. No matter how many times you get to do it, it's like, wow, I just
Yeah.
changed that guy's life.
The light bulb moments in
Mhm.
the work I do with people are highs that I chase every week. Yeah.
Yeah.
It never gets old.
It's amazing, man. I totally love that. So you went into drafting. That was something that you were, or engineering, and then drafting design through for engineering stuff because you're designing circuit boards, or what kind of designs?
I did. It's funny because I was born and raised in Michigan, and I did everything except automotive or automotive suppliers. So my first job was steel, and it was like roll-offs and bins and like dumpsters, stuff like that you'd see behind a
Nice.
restaurant or
Yeah.
going down the road on a big truck. And then from there, I went to pneumatics. So they would like pull air in from hospital air systems, scrub them with a certain kind of chemicals. The air would come out clean the other end, and a lot of valves and switches and
Sure.
pipes, that sort of thing. Then I went to glass, and a lot of that was just restructuring things that already existed within a drawing and giving it to the field of glass builders. And the final place I worked was concrete. And I actually like telling this story because this was the final thing I did. And it was a culmination of so many things when I finally
Yeah.
walked away. And literally, especially when the time changed in Michigan, I'd go in at 5, it's dark. I'd get out at 6 at night, it's dark, no
Mm-hmm.
window in my office. And my work for the last 6 months I was there was to take a foundation drawing for a home, a foundation. And we had the same drawing over and over and over because we were supplying people who had sold a lot of the houses that look all the same, so
Yeah.
building out neighborhoods and stuff like that. And I would point the inside and outside corners. So click on every inside and outside corner on that drawing, and then load those data points into a little machine and hand it to a guy, and he would take it out to the field, and they would know where to dig in the ground. So I could do it sleeping, left-handed. Nowadays, I've worked remote for so long. I think back to that and I'm like, man, did I not need to drive an hour each way to do that? It was so
Right.
terrible.
Yeah.
So one day, right around the holidays, I felt like a vampire. I never saw the sun. I hated what I did. Never saw a mirror. And I was just like, I'm done. And I walked away from it all. And a lot of early 20 friends of mine were like, you're crazy. You click a mouse and you make 3 times as much as we do and you got benefits and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but I ain't happy. Like, don't you guys care about that?
Mm-hmm.
And I walked away. Yeah.
Why do you think we did a band? Because that made us so happy, right? Playing in a
Yeah,
band
exactly.
is a lot of passion.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those things where not only was it artistic expression, but it was an escape. And of course, a lot of your gigs happen on the weekend. So I'd work hard Monday through Friday and then just couldn't wait to go do shows and rehearse on the weekends and stuff. Cause I was getting away from the cave.
Wow. That's really, really interesting. And it totally makes sense, right? You're not fulfilled. You want fulfillment because yes, it's not all about having a bank full of money. I mean, sure, that's helpful. But then if you're, you got to fill in, you got to live a balanced life, right?
Yeah.
So we're finding the balance, the work-life balance that they talk about. And the funny thing is, when you do the thing that you're really passionate about, you don't need to balance it because you're already in the zone of genius that you love.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a neighbor. I've been in Texas for the last 4 months. So born and raised in Michigan and been in Texas for the last 4 months. And great guy, getting to know each other really quick. And, he's always like either hanging out in the garage, watching sports, having a beer or going out and doing something. And most of the time I'm sending my partner, Jax. She's a chef and very much like beer drinker, rock and roll chick, all that stuff. So I'll send her with him, like, go hang out with Gino because I got to work. But he's asking me all the time. He's like, man, you work too much. What do you do for fun? And I'm like, my own business development stuff that doesn't have a deadline.
Yeah.
Because I love telling story. I love helping other people shine. I work with entrepreneurs who are already awesome. So I don't have to write a script or put on a show for them. I just have to capture their essence and how great they already are and help them, get that in front of a new audience. So it doesn't get old, and it's almost exactly the opposite of my engineering career.
Well, that's really awesome. I mean, you shared us a little bit about where we come from, what caused you to pull a last straw.
I actually, we never had any delusions that we're going to make it as rock stars. Now, we did some really cool things. We had some labels who looked at us. We got to open up for a lot of my heroes, tour with some of them. It was incredible, and I wouldn't trade it. But all of us were very realistic about what we were doing. And right around the 5.5 year mark, I'm like, okay, this is, we're going to put out our 3rd album. And if it doesn't do something for us, we're going to go ahead and hang up the gloves and move on. And we were all fine with that. So I wanted to go out with a little bit of a bang, and this will date me as well, but we wanted to do a CD DVD combo. So they would both come in one container. And as soon as we agreed to do that, we were filming behind the scenes of us recording in the studio and all these different things. And I wanted to do a full like narrative music video, like a real music video. So we did. And I could talk for hours about all the different things that happened, from A to Z there. But some of the cool things were getting actors from all over the Midwest, some that went on to act in big, like television shows and all kinds of cool stuff. Get them to come and do it for free, just for food and a place to stay, and write a script and kind of exercise the demons of my past a little bit through this kind of process. And just have fun and tell a great story. And that's where video was really introduced to me, because it's the first time that I had any control over what was being shot or edited or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd always loved music videos, loved film, loved movies, but it was never a part of my life until then. And that's where I got the video bug that's
Mm-hmm.
led all the way till now, is having that experience, having it go off without a hitch. And then knowing that there's some folks out there who have been in some pretty big TV shows and stuff, that if you go to their IMDb,
Mm-hmm.
the lifted music video is the first thing on their resume, because it was one of the first things they
The
did.
first
And
thing
it's
they
like,
did. Yeah.
oh, they started with us. It's so cool. And that's really where I'm like, okay, video is, in my opinion, I'm biased, of course,
Mm-hmm.
is the most powerful vehicle to take story where it's going. And that's what I help people do now. So that's where I kind of got bit by the bug, and it was over. I'm like, whatever I do from here on out, I have to help people tell story visually, because that's what I love.
Man, I totally love that. And you're absolutely right. We've been consuming videos through movies, TV shows, and game shows, and what you name it, right? It's on television. We're watching it. We're engrossed in it, and it totally changes the way you look at things. Now, books are amazing, and in fact, books are the foundation of what films are built on top of, right? So,
Yeah.
storytelling, take that imagination to the next level. Totally blows your mind, and condenses a, let's say, 54-hour long book sequel into, say, 12 hours of 3 sequel movies.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you put it that way too, because one of the things I do with my
Mhm.
clients and members of my community is use fictional storytelling tools to get
Mhm.
them to understand real life stories and relatability between humans. And as entrepreneurs, like, a lot of them like a good list, a good checklist, a good blueprint, a good,
Yeah.
framework. And oftentimes I have to use one, because if you
Mhm.
just talk about mindset, sometimes people get a little off track. So I
Mhm.
like to use those things that are used to tell great stories in fiction, like you said, books, video games, movies, all the cool stuff,
Mhm.
and help entrepreneurs kind of pour themselves into that framework to realize, oh wait, I can condense my life experiences into a couple minute video and
Yeah.
really get across what I'm about. And I can do that over and over. So I love the way you just set that up, because it is really a focus of what I try and do. Is
Mhm.
you know, my favorite step is when we've got the gear on lock, and everything's ready and people are looking good and sounding good and all this stuff. And sometimes there's this part where people are like, what do I talk about, Dan? Or how do I be myself? Or how do I get comfortable doing this? And repetition and all the muscle memory and stuff, that's all
Mhm.
important. But a
Yeah.
big part of it is like, hey, don't forget, you're an entrepreneur. You've got tons of life experience.
Mhm.
You have a lot of stories to tell. And we don't got to tell them all in one big long video. So,
Right.
like, let's just pick one, fill out a simple little framework with it, tell that story, and see what happens. And it really opens up the floodgates to people going, oh, yeah, I do know a
Mhm.
lot of stuff. And I have
Yeah.
been around a while. I got plenty to talk about, and I love when that happens.
You know, what you said there is so monumental, because in 2018, I tried to record a video course. And I spent the time, okay, I know the tech gear, right? I've been behind the camera forever. I know how all of that stuff works: lighting, camera, audio, blah, 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 background. So I set it up in my basement, and I spent 2 hours, and I go in front of the camera, and I'm basically frozen because I don't know where to start. I don't know what to say. Sure, I have a outline of my course, but I'm somebody who likes to tell a backstory, but I was just totally frozen. I was like, I don't know how to start this. So I'm like, I need to do some more work on myself. So as I'm talking to you and talk to other guests on the podcast, listening to their stories, it suddenly clicked in my head, like, oh, they're telling stories. I'm listening to stories. These are all stories that if you set it up right on the right framework, yeah, it's gonna make sense.
Yeah, it's super cool too that I'm heavily reliant on metaphor, and to
Mm-hmm.
be completely transparent, which I always try and be. It's because it's kind of the only way I know how to learn. I'm a little bit hands on, but I'm mostly
Mm-hmm.
like visual. And then it's the only way I know how to teach. So
Yeah.
luckily, it's a great way to teach because I can take complex things and make them relatable to something you already understand. So you can, lock those pieces into place. And it is oftentimes that I can hear a story from another person or vice versa, and they have no idea what I'm talking about as in the subject matter, but they understand what I'm talking about in feeling, transportation, how you got somewhere, how
Yeah.
you related it to something that's very basic and human. And all of a sudden I can come into your world. And even if I don't know anything about, biomechanics, I can still hear your stories and hear your metaphors and go, oh, I can wrap my head around this. This is cool. And literally that's why we love things like documentaries and reading a great book, because someone can take a really rich and complex story and make it understandable for us through explanations and scenery and metaphor and analogy and all those beautiful things.
Dan, that's so awesome, because the reason I thought of that was, number one, we've all read The Martian. If you haven't read the book The Martian, please go read it and then go watch the movie, and you'll know exactly what we're talking about. 18 hours of you listening to the book versus watching a 2-hour long movie, right? Now, sure, the details might be missing, but you get the essence, you get the feeling that he's going through as you're reading the book, as you're watching the movie, you get the same feels, which is really powerful.
Yeah. I love that you use the word essence. It's something I use quite a bit as well. A lot of times I tell my clients and members and stuff, like if we can get to 80%, and I use the word essence on purpose, 80% of your essence, or 80% of what it's like to meet you in real life, whether that's Zoom, phone call, in person, doesn't matter. That's a grand slam. So the first point of that is that it relieves some of the tension they may feel that you got to like be perfect in video. You don't. You just have to get a B minus, right? And the second thing that it kind of sets is that that's what people are after. They're after your essence most of the time, especially in services-based entrepreneurship, especially in the digital arena. People just want to like know they can trust you. And a great way to do that is for them to feel like 80% of what it's like to really meet you. I got this little breakdown, if you don't care if I share it.
Oh, please.
It's this little like 3-part thing. And I just call it kind of like the magic of video. I need a better title, but it's one of the few things where I don't mind using the word magic because it just kind of feels that way. And the first part is you can start to build the know, like, and trust that we're all after. So people love to throw those terms around, but not like get into the meat of it. Like, what does that mean? Or go one layer deeper.
Yeah.
So when I think of know, like, and trust, I think of incremental. I think of like my neighbor I mentioned earlier, Gino. I met him. Then he got my mail for me while I was gone. And then we had a beer together. And that, there was like this building of relationship. And what's really cool is that someone can be sitting in their bed with a hoodie on a Saturday and Cheeto dust all over their shirt, watching your video on a phone. And that's how intimate that relationship could be without you being there at all. And so they can build that know, like, and trust anywhere they're at. The second fun component, I need a better word for this too, but I call it micro fame. None of us are really out to be famous by any means, but like there's just this like subconscious recognizability that happens with video, where when I've seen you on a screen, especially if you're looking good and sounding good, much like you are right now, I all of a sudden feel like if I saw you on the street, I'd be like, oh, hey, you make those videos. There's just that recognizability, that like little tiny pinch of micro fame. And then the third thing, kind of in sequence, is if someone does meet you in real life, whether that's on a webinar, a sales call, a discovery meeting, just grabbing coffee, maybe a networking meeting, and they've started to know, like, and trust you, they've got that at least B minus dose of your essence and what it's like to, experience what it is that you're sharing. And then you lock that in real life. You are the way you were in your videos and in your education or whatever it is that you do. It's over. It's over, because then it's like, oh, thank God you're like you are in your videos. That's so relieving. You're not trying to trick me into anything. You're not trying to do something crazy. You're just you. And now I'm really comfortable. And all the work that you put in without being there, because it was through video, now gets locked into place when you meet someone in real life. And I have it happen all the time. People, like have some sort of discovery call with me, or maybe even a sales call. And they're like, oh man, it's so relieving that you are just kind of chill and you make me feel comfortable. And, I'm always
Yeah.
one to say I'm trying to disqualify everyone. So like, I'm not trying to convince you to do anything. I'm trying to see if we're a good fit. All
Right.
those things can settle in at the end just because of, video having those effects on people.
No, you're absolutely right, because it it carries over, right? That essence through our eyes and our ears, right? It's not, you're just not listening to them on the phone, because you can mask a lot of that stuff. But when you're looking at the face and the sound matches that face, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
Dan is the guy that I talked on the phone, and now I'm having beers with him, and I'm hanging out with him, having coffee, etc. Man,
Yeah. And
I love I love all of this stuff, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on the podcast, because I knew who I'm going to be talking to,
yeah.
you know, through those videos.
Yeah. And that's powerful, right? Like, I saw some of your stuff and I remember, I think we were on like an office hours type call or some kind of Zoom type call.
Yeah.
And we have some overlap in some of the work that we do. And I remember like pointing out how cool it was that we can be in the same community on the same call doing similar, not the same thing, but similar things. And we're both learning, we're both like pumping each other up, and we both understand there's plenty enough pie to go around. So like we
Oh,
don't have to
absolutely.
feel bad about it. We can feel good. And I saw your face light up and you're like, I know, right? Like it doesn't have to be like that. And a lot of that came through. I could kind of get a sense of your personality already
Yeah.
before I ever said those words.
Yeah.
And I knew I felt pretty safe throwing it out with some assumption that you're
Yeah.
probably comfortable with that too. And it turned out
Absolutely.
that you were. Yeah.
It's beautiful, right? Well, we've been talking about some amazing stuff, concepts. I'm a man of metaphors. 100% of the time, I talk about beekeeping, cycling, driving on freeways, and looking at the people, driving on that same freeway, because we can relate, and it feels like we're on the same freeway. And there's plenty of lanes. It's not a one-way freeway. There's plenty of lanes on the freeway.
Yeah. 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 I like that. I like that a lot because you can imagine over like say a 2,000-mile trip, I'll be in the lead for some of it. You'll be in the lead for some of it. We'll be side by side for some of it. You might need to take some time off and get a hotel for part of it. I might need to visit some friends. I love that metaphor because I think we get caught up in the being on a 4-lane highway, but feeling like we're on a one-way and I better pass you whenever I can,
Right.
I don't know. I've been around a little while now and I've never found it to be that the competition's so stiff that I have to like be a cutthroat. So
that's so true. And unfortunately it's been taught one way or another that there's competition. Like, no. And funny thing is, when I showed up and talked to this gentleman in the LA studio in person, and he's like, what do you do? It's like, well, I help people set up their home studios. And he's like, you're in my business. You're competing with my studio. I'm like, no, I'm not. There's only one of you and one of me. And he's like, no, but there's more of, there's other people who run the same name. I'm like, yes, but in LA, there's only one of you who's running a podcast studio, who's had celebrities over recording their stuff. It's like, you're right. So, and I saw like initially, like when I told him, like when he said, I'm your competition, and he basically folded his arms, closing himself off. And as I'm talking to him, I could see him relax and like, okay, we're in safe space.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I remember the first time I was in an executive boardroom and there was some people there before me and I was allowed to wait in the same space. So I could overhear their conversation and I was just chilling for a few minutes before it was my turn to sit down with some of the guys. And it was a really interesting conversation. I can't remember what it was about. I just remember that they enjoyed each other's company and they were laughing and they were talking business. And so, when it was my turn, we were kind of easing into the conversation and they're like, oh, thanks for waiting. Sorry about that, whatever. I'm like, oh, no problem. And I'm a story developer, right? So I'm like, can I ask who that was? And it was their direct competition. And that was the first time that I started realizing that a lot of the big dogs all talk to each other.
Yeah.
Fast forward in 2020, when I lost everything and started over, we did something called the 1 Minute Media Initiative, which was we had a bunch of free time on our hands and
Mm-hmm.
no clients because everything disappeared. So we're like, what do we do? And we offered free videos to essential businesses, and we ended up filming a lot of like restaurants and stuff, just real quick, punchy videos to help them let their audience know how they could continue to patronize them.
Nice.
And after that series ran, I got contacted by a pretty substantial sized marketing firm in Detroit, Michigan. And they're like, hey, we really like what you did, and we want to do kind of our own model of it. I'm like, wow, that's exciting. They're like, you want to be on this kind of panel? And I'm like, yeah. And I get introduced to 5 other people. So it's almost like the Avengers, kind of coming together. And every single one of them mastermind together every month, and they were all competition. And it was like, okay, that locked it in for me, the beginning and the end. These people all talk. They're trying to figure out best practices and how to stay ahead of the curve, and referring things that don't completely line up with them to other people they know they can trust. And they're building networking and relationships. And this is all the stuff that happens in offices that you don't see because it's not happening on the internet.
Exactly.
And I've taken all that with me. It's like my network is full of all kinds of people that on paper you might be like, why are you telling them all your secrets, Dan? And it's like, because they tell me theirs too.
Yes, I love that. Oh my God. Well, guys, we've been having so much fun talking with Dan. After the break, he's going to share 3 hacks to take away for storytelling in video. So stick around and we'll be right back. I think that was a pretty good version of hold on, we'll be right back.
Yeah, that's one to like go review as you're like kind of scripting that little transition. Yeah, because that was good. I liked it.
Awesome. Yeah, man, I really love what you're talking about, and it's almost like I want to work with you to create these videos for myself.
Dude, I've done it both ways, where I help other video creators and they help me. I'm so willing because all of us, right? I call it the mechanic effect. It's known as the cobbler's shoes and all that kind of stuff. But it's a real life story. Like I had a mechanic when I lived in Michigan. His name was Joe, 36 or 7 year ASE certified master mechanic. And I always had my family's cars done there. My cars worked on. And I had to drop something off and I had to talk to him. Normally I just drop stuff off and say, fix it.
Yeah.
Had to talk to him. So I was getting there at the beginning of the day, and I got there about 5 minutes before he got there to open up the shop.
Yeah.
And he pulled in this old crappy truck, and I looked at it and I kind of chuckled, and I've seen it before, and he knows what I do for a living.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do you drive that crappy truck, man? Like you could fix anything. You could go get some blown motor Audi or whatever and like fix it and drive it and basically get it free. And he looked at it and he looked at me, and almost like in a movie, he looked at it again, stroked his chin, looked at me, and he's like, it's easy to work on. And he left.
Yes.
And it broke my heart for myself, because I was like, oh my God, I just crank my stuff out with no vision and no preparation because it's easy to do for me.
Yeah.
And then to put all of the curation and all of the technique into my clients' work. Why do I not do, So anyway, all that to say, I would love to jam with you and help you when I could, because it's fun.
I love it. All right, let's go back in.
Oh, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
One of the hacks is me talking about earlier, utilizing fictional storytelling tools. And I do have like a freebie. So I don't know if that's allowed on your show or whatever.
Absolutely. Please.
Super simple little freebie. Okay. Just wanted to make sure before I just...
No, absolutely. I think I even have it in the email copy. Hey, create a custom link for the audience to, go visit. So yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm typing it in now. Make sure it's live because it's been a while since I gave it out. All right, it is cool.
Sure.
All right.
Welcome back, guys. If you've been listening to the episode, we've been talking with Dan Bennett, and we're having a lot of fun talking about video, talking about storytelling, talking about the emotions and the essence video helps create. And the beautiful part is a lot more people are realizing this thanks to the pandemic. Like really, we are thanking the pandemic because of it, we are not only closer to each other, but we have access to so many tools. Zoom got an upgrade, StreamYard got an upgrade, got bought out by other companies. There's new companies coming on around the block all the time, and we're able to create this amazing sort of platform and foundation for each other. So Dan, thanks for sticking around and sharing your journey, the motivations, and all the amazing stories that we've been sharing with the audience.
Hey, no problem at all. This has been fun. Yeah, I mentioned earlier, 2020 lost everything, started over. Literally went out into the wilderness to find
Hmm.
myself, and came out with a big stack of what I call like micro epiphanies for myself. And
Yeah.
one of those things was, to like be really picky about who I'm working with and do things my way, and really, really search for fulfillment in my work.
Hmm.
I have a lot of big companies in my past that I've done work for, and those logos look great on my website, and I've got some fun stories and stuff, but it was never fulfilling. And that's the honest truth.
Yeah.
And starting to work very purposefully with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, startups, stuff like that is so fulfilling. And as I kind of emerged from that and was like, okay, who am I going to work with? Because I know I got to freelance while I build my empire. So what's this going to
Hmm.
be? Um, it was like I'd been on Zoom for about 4.5 years at that time. So I was just like, come, children, come, welcome. I've been here for ages. Let me show you how to do this. And a lot
Hmm.
of my first clientele were people who did really cool things in real life. One is an actress, a former actress on Broadway, who
Yeah.
works with executives on performance and body language and how to give better talks and speeches and all these different things. And she was still doing the same work. It was just from
Hmm.
home now. So very quickly upgrade the camera, get the lights looking good, get great audio. And she was able to continue doing what she was doing before, just
Yeah.
remotely now. And it was empowering. It's like that's fulfilling. This person didn't even really had to pivot. They were
Hmm.
just able to very quickly do it from home and do just as high of a, quality job. So
Yeah.
I I thanks Zoom, I guess.
Thank you, Zoom, for sure. Yeah,
Hopefully
exactly.
they're cutting you a check.
Absolutely. And it's brought the world so much closer too, I think. I've met a lot more people that are aligned with my interests, that are more supportive than I've found in the past whole decade of people to support what I want to do. And that
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have happened for me if I had not stepped into the podcasting journey in 2018. So thank you, Gary V, for telling me to go document my journey, because it's been a huge transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it was almost like kind of a loudspeaker. I've always imagined a lot of entrepreneurs as silos, like you'd see on a farm. And
Hmm.
there's a bunch of them and they're really close together, but we're all inside of them. And it was almost like someone came along with a loudspeaker and there's like, hey, and we all stuck our heads out and we're like, oh,
Oh.
there's one over there. There's another one. And we started kind of realizing through
Mm.
community and networking and of course, Zoom calls and all the fun things like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we're not alone.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because a lot of people, and rightfully so, some of the time, like to say, we're the most connected we've ever been and the most alone we are. And there's a lot
Hmm.
of truth to that. But I've also seen the positivity over the last 2 years of being able to jump on a call, solve a problem. I would have had to drive an hour, get
Yeah.
a slot or a meeting. And if you couldn't make the meeting, we'd have to reschedule, whatever. Now I can help you solve your problem super quick and
Hmm.
we both go on our way. So there's just a lot of really positive things I don't think get talked about enough. So I'm glad you brought up that part of the unfortunate pandemic happening
Yeah.
is some fortunate things like us being able to do what we're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so share with the audience 3 hacks to take away on using storytelling, videos, and all of that good stuff that you teach, man.
All right. So earlier I talked about going into the forest and coming back out with these micro epiphanies. And one of them was I was having this thought that I like to challenge people's thinking, but I don't like to give advice unless I really know what I'm talking about. So most of the time that leaves me only giving advice on video and storytelling. And while I was out there, I was whiteboarding out some stuff and I was like, man, I want a third thing, but I really don't want to spend like the 10,000 hours to master something new so I can give advice on it. So what can I give advice on? And I came, out of the woods and I'm looking at my notes. And one of the first things I did was segment off a little piece of my email list. And it was all people that I would consider friends of different levels. So former clients, I was clients of some of these people, mentors, mentees, what I call colleagues, just other entrepreneurs doing something in the digital world. And I
Mhm.
sent them all an email. I'm like, hey, y'all know what's going on in my life. I've lost everything. I'm starting over, da 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 da. I just want you to keep me top of mind. Like, you don't have to give me referrals right now or any of that, but like, just think of me and what I'm trying to do. And you know my skill set. So if I can help you do something quick, like a motion graphic, animate your logo, do a quick edit for you, something I can do to give back for keeping me top of mind, let me know. And I'll knock that out for free because I want to really strengthen my network. The response to this was overwhelming.
Wow.
Almost 100% of all people wrote back. People were talking about how it made them cry because I was just so transparent and
Oh,
vulnerable.
man.
Other people offered their services for free right then. So like executive coaches and all these just like really cool things happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away. And then a couple days later, I'm like, wow, that response rate was really good. I should write something else to them, you know? So I don't know where this came from, but I just
Mm-hmm.
had the idea to email them and say, hey, imagine a reporter came by and they asked you, hey, you know that Dan Bennett guy, right? Yeah, you do. Okay, cool. What would you say his superpower is? And I just left it at that. I'm like, fun little
Mm-hmm.
thought experiment, hit
Yeah.
reply, you know? And 20 some people out of the 30 some wrote back that time too. And I was like, oh my goodness. And there was 10 different people that said some form of something I had never heard before in my life. And that was, you make me feel calm. I feel like I can trust you when I watch your content, or when you
Mm-hmm.
worked with me one-on-one. You really helped me understand that the learning curve wasn't as big as I thought, and I really could do this. It was just all these different forms of the superpower I never knew I had because I'd never heard anyone say it before, that I brought some kind of trust and calm and chill to this process that can be pretty scary, which is getting on camera. So I say all that to say, I found my third thing that I can give advice on and feel really, really comfortable about it. And that is, talk about what you're trying to do. Tell people what you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Tell people your ideas, and don't be afraid that they don't come to fruition, because all you're doing is just planting seeds. Just talk about what you're doing, because I can now trace back over the last 2 years, after having the best year I've ever had in my life, after having the worst year I've ever had in my life,
Mm-hmm.
so many things that are attributed to me just saying, hey, I'm rebuilding. I'm trying to do something cool. Community is really important to me. I'm trying to build the digital side of my business because the one-on-one side comes very naturally to me. I just kept telling my story, just kept talking about what I was trying to accomplish. And it's opened up so many doors. So hacker tip number 1, talk about what you're up to, even if it's a little bit scary to do so.
Oh man, I love that so much, and whew, it's giving me goosebumps because we think that we need to be so polished.
Yeah.
We need to be so perfect talking about everything. But then in reality, if you watch movies, if you watch even late night shows, what's the most attractive feature of that host? It's that they're transparent, they're
Yeah.
genuine. Well, how are they doing that? By dumping on themselves. Like anything that they're talking about, they're making fun of themselves. They're being their original self. So why do we need to be somebody different? We're not in a movie. We don't need to be a different character. Just need to be on a late night show and be yourself.
Yeah. Man, I just got goosebumps literally as you're saying that, because you have no idea how many times in one-on-one work and community work that I've
Mm-hmm.
told people, and I'm talking like getting into the hundreds now. If you want to know how to tell a great story, watch a stand-up comedian. Self-deprecation, open loops, great time, close the loop at the end. And if they're really good, it's a throwback to the beginning, and the
Mm-hmm.
whole story has a bow on it when it's done.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, that's how you entertain. That's how you tell a story. So I love that you talked about late night, because
Mm-hmm.
that is so true, man. Yeah, that was cool.
I'm telling you, we're cut from the same cloth. We're just
I know, right?
different.
Yeah. So tip number 2 is really simple, and it's one that like makes light bulbs go off for the people I work with all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when they're getting kind of caught up in like making that perfect video, right? So oftentimes I call it a cocktail. I use a screwdriver as an example. So half
Mm-hmm.
orange juice, half vodka. You got to start somewhere. So people ask me, hey, Dan, should I like just ship this video, just get it done and get it out so I'm not sitting around worrying about it? Or should I polish it? It's my brand. It's my
Mm-hmm.
face, man. Like I should take some time, right? What should I do? And I say, yes. And it frustrates them because I start introducing the duality of entrepreneurship to
Uh-huh.
them. There's always two sides, and it's not very often that one is right and one is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So you make that first cocktail, and maybe that's a bit too much vodka. Well,
Yeah.
next time 75% juice, 25% vodka,
Mm-hmm.
and you find what works for you, but you got to
Yes.
start somewhere. So make your cocktail and start going. So in the vein of that idea, I tell people all the time, you don't have to show anyone your videos.
Mm-hmm.
That's
You
it.
don't.
Tip number 2, make 49 of them, put out number 50. You got
Yes,
your
please.
wings stretched, your video content creation muscles all warmed up,
Mm-hmm.
and no one sees 1 through 49. They see 50. And that doesn't mean wait till it's perfect. That just
Right.
means you don't have to show anyone. You can practice, and that's okay.
Yes. Man, I love that. And that takes me to the point of looking at the greats like Muhammad Ali or Michael Jordan and Steph Curry and all these athletes. They're simply training to be better than themselves. Like they're
Yep.
practicing, they're putting in the reps to go to book writing. As it was Malcolm Gladwell, and he's like, people come to me and they're like, I want to write this book. It's going to be awesome. And he's like, well, where's your bad writing? If that's going to
Yeah.
be a good writing, where's your bad writing? Like, show me that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's permission, man. Like
Mm,
you should, if you care about what you're doing, you should have bad videos. And some of them should be on the internet.
mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to put number 1 out there, but you
Yeah.
should put something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because, like, I don't know why, and I don't know where this number came from, but 2019, January 1, and it had nothing to do with New Year's resolution, just happened to start on that day.
Mm-hmm.
I did 200 videos for 200 days in a row. And I
Wow.
just left my setup up, and I just got in front of the camera, didn't really edit too much, just cut the ends off. And if I flubbed, I flubbed,
Mm-hmm.
and had a topic for each day. So like Tactical Tuesday and, why Wednesday and stuff like that. And all I wanted to do was like see how they did, how I felt, if I got any better, and then just tell my audience what I learned from the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened that I think was the most impactful of all things is I made some terrible videos and I put them out, and I learned how to not care because I still have
Oh
all
my
those
God.
videos.
Yeah.
Sometimes they come up on my like memories or whatever, and I see them, and some are good. And I'm like, ooh, I had a good day that day. And then some are like, oh man, I can't believe I put that out. But it got me, to the point where I'm at. And I call it the wince face. Like it's the one part where I go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I can't do for you, client. I'm sorry. I can't put in the reps for you. I can't put in
Yes.
the work for you. It's the only part I can't help with. I can make you look incredible. I can teach you how to tell a story. I can
Mm-hmm.
show you the finish line, build the car, the video that's going to take your story where it's going, but I can't make you get in the car. So that part's on you.
100%. And I'll tell my people same thing. Yes, you can go buy $250 marathon shoes, but you cannot run the marathon tomorrow unless you put in the reps.
Yeah.
You're gonna be hurting. You're gonna be hurting.
Yeah, it's hurting. And man, that's a great way to put it too, because I might be able to run, like a half marathon.
Mm-hmm.
But I guarantee I won't do anything else for 14 days after that, Yeah, put in the reps.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third tip I have that I mentioned earlier is using fictional storytelling tools to plug real life stories into. So you've been so gracious as to allow me to share one of my free tools.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you'll have all the links and all the information. I'll just say it really quick. It's the number one MIN.MEDIA/story spine. And the story spine is kind of made popular by Disney and Pixar. They didn't invent it, but they kind of relied on it early on. And you can plug almost any Disney or Pixar movie into the story spine, and you see how that story transpired. And it's very, very simplistic. It starts off once upon a time, and then one day everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, something new happened. Oh, and because of that new thing, something new happened. And then because of all that, this happened until one day this final result happened. And then ever since then, this is what's been happening. And what's cool about it is you can plug anything in there and it just gives you the spine. It gives you just enough to give it kind of structure and framework.
Yeah.
But you're not manipulating your own story. You're just telling a real life story, and that kind of takes you through. So my super quick example is once upon a time, Dan lost everything and he went out into the woods to find himself, because that day everything changed. His mindset changed, and he's like, I'm going to if I'm going to rebuild, I'm going to figure out a better way to do this. And because of that, he took a lot of notes and wrote on a whiteboard and took photos of it. And because of that, his brain started kind of having a conversation with itself. And Dan kind of became the observer of all these new thoughts. And because of that, he came out with all these micro epiphanies and these kind of changes he wanted to implement, until one day he started telling everyone what he was up to and trying to build. And ever since then, doors have been opening and cool conversations like this have been happening because I was willing to tell my story. So that's just me plugging my real life story into the spine. And hopefully some people go grab that free tool and just plug some things in just to see what it looks like, because you have a whole bunch of stories inside of you, I promise.
Wow, Dan, that was brilliant. And what's beautiful is that, yes, you know, Disney popularized it, but I actually, that exact story was also taught by Dan Pink on masterclass.com.
Yeah, I've seen that. Oh, it's so
I'm like,
good.
oh my God, it's so good. And the beautiful part about you're giving this tool away for free, which is really powerful. And I'm going to go grab it myself because pretty soon at Podfest, I get to go talk in front of an audience.
Ooh.
And I'm like, how do I even tell stories? Like, yes, I can tell stories, but I want to tell my story in a way that is going to open up people's minds and like, oh, okay, I see the transformation. Because I kind of figured like you got to go through a transformation yourself to be able to teach somebody or tell somebody or whatever, right? Have the
That's
expertise.
powerful. Yeah.
So I've done that, right? You can see my before and after video. I'm like, okay, this happened. But then I'm like, how do I even tell that story? So thank you for sharing that tool. It's going to be really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And side shout out to that masterclass. A client gifted me a 12-month membership to masterclass, and Daniel Pink's was one of the ones that I was like, whoa. And if someone has masterclass and they haven't watched that one, watch the section on frameworks.
Yes.
Wow. Just framing things and the way, anyway,
No,
I love that you've seen that too.
That one is really powerful. And I want to share with you, there's this gentleman, Charles, he created something called PIP decks. And it's something that he recently, he's basically selling a deck. It's called Story Blocks, story tactics, so that you can plug in your story into. So that he's got like 7 different types of stories that you can have. You can have the Dragon Slayer story, and he basically tells this story where now he's a designer himself, and he wanted to drill into the company that he's working for, the power of prototyping. You should prototype. You should prototype because you don't want other people to find out. Blah blah blah. So then, instead of talking about prototyping, he actually told a fictional story and related those fictional elements to real life. So he talks about a blacksmith who's working on the spear, but the spear is not sharp enough, and then they go fight a dragon. The dragon didn't get pierced from that thing, and the dragon ate destroyed the king, and everything was at loss. So then he's like, imagine prototyping was a spear, and we didn't end up spend much time on it. Well, this is what's gonna happen. So people, after he was like, oh, that was pretty cool. Like people around the office were walking up and talking to him, listening to the story being told. And then even 2 months later, everybody was like, they got the idea. They're like, the spear and the dragon. You got to work on the spear to get the dragon. So he's got this deck of cards that you can, get that has a lot more frameworks as well. I'm like, whoa, this is powerful. Yeah. So the reason I've been focusing on story and is because at Social Media Marketing World, I got to meet Pat Flint. And I'm, first time meeting him, long time following him, like, okay, Pat, and he knows me, through the community. I was also holding his beloved, what do you call it? The Switch Pod.
Yeah.
Right. And it's all decked out. It's all decked out with a camera and an iPhone.
Nice.
It was like really cool. It had like 2 iPhones on it. He was like, can we take a selfie with it? And then I told him like, hey, I'm going to be speaking at Podfest and I'm really looking forward to it. And all he told me was tell stories.
Yeah.
So he seeded that, and I'm like looking for stories everywhere, and all these things are popping up in front of me. I'm reading Storyworthy, I'm watching this, and then now listening to you on using this formula, and then I just love the way you put in your stuff, and like, oh wow, I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm all in on
It's
Dan
eh,
mode.
it's so powerful, man. It
Hmm.
really is, and it's cool because I didn't invent video. It's already powerful, so I don't have to convince anyone that it works. And I
No.
didn't invent story. It's ancient, and I just get to utilize it.
Hmm.
And I don't have to invent a brand new product and convince people to use it. I love the way that you just put that because it just is. Sometimes
Hmm.
you just have to remember how powerful these things are and trust the process. One of my go-tos is the medicine in the cheese, and the
Hmm.
medicine that the veterinarian tells you to get your dog to take this pill, and the dog won't take the pill, and he says put it in some cheese or put it in a little bit of peanut butter.
Hmm.
The dog takes the pill. The medicine for me is story and story development. When I used to work with bigger corporate clients, they understood story development. They had whole internal teams based
Mm.
around brand and story. When I started working with smaller companies, it was normally like story development. What the heck's that, Dan? So I had to start finding ways to trick my clients into telling better stories. And the cheese or the peanut butter was video. So I'm
Mm.
hiding the good stuff, which is story, inside of the thing that you think is the best part, which is video.
Yeah.
And that's what led me to the analogy of like video is just a vehicle that takes a story where it's going. So we know the vehicle works. That's fine. We don't have to
Hmm.
build you a brand new car. We already got one. What are we going to put in it? And it's all these things that lead to kind of the frequency illusion, right? So you buy a car and you start seeing that color and brand car everywhere, and it's because your brain now is thinking
Hmm.
it sees it way more, but it's an illusion. The same thing happens with story. Once you start caring about story, you don't got to go to school to learn how to be an
Mm-mm.
author, right, or whatever. If you just start caring about story, you'll start seeing it everywhere. You'll start telling stories.
Yeah.
You'll start captivating audiences, even if it's one at a time, and you'll start seeing traction. And I almost feel sometimes like I'm cheating, like I have a special weapon that no one else has because
Yeah.
I can pull story out of people and I can tell
Hmm.
my own story through metaphor and analogy that they understand. And all of a sudden we're communicating at a different level than just, hey, how you feeling today? How's the weather? Yeah.
100%. I love that, man. We've had so much fun talking with Dan. Storytelling, video, that's where the power lies, guys. All right. So, towards the end of the episode, I'd like to ask some quick fire questions. And these are fun ones. So, it kind of gets in deeper. And there's, I'm sure there's a lot of story that'll come out of this one. And so, if this episode is longer than 45 minutes, please forgive me. What is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
Coding.
Mm. I
Yeah, I
tried
would love to
coding.
be able to build my own stuff on a whim. I can code enough to be dangerous and do web, but I really wish I knew how to build digital tools.
Ooh, that would be fun. That would be fun. All right, next one. What did you want to be when you were a child?
Sports. I didn't have a single sport because I kind of played them all and I did pretty well at them. And I
Hmm.
always saw myself, at least through college, doing something that would take me all the way to the end of my collegiate career. I always
Nice.
wanted to play sports.
Very cool. I don't have a sports thing. I mean, I never really played sports. I was always the goalie because I couldn't run the soccer ball, or I'd be in the outfield playing cricket. I was not good at it. So I was like, you know what? I'll lean into tech.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your favorite movie or TV show?
Movies, probably Shawshank Redemption.
Hmm.
I think it's one of the purest told stories in cinema. TV show, I go the other way. I like just like crazy stuff and wild stuff. So
Hmm.
Mindhunter is a television show that
Ooh.
just I wish there was more seasons.
I'm gonna have to check out Mindhunter. I've seen Shawshank Redemption. It was really well done movie.
Yeah, I love it.
Um, what movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Ooh, man, I think I'd want something like classic
Hmm.
and fun. My name's Dan, so I think of Daniel from the Karate Kid. So maybe like the Karate Kid, just something
Karate.
where, you know, there's sometimes where you see a child actor and maybe you feel a little bad, like, oh, their career never took off or whatever. When I see him, I'm like, you're the Karate Kid though. So like you could go on, have a regular life, regular jobs, invest in some real estate, whatever, but you're
Yeah.
still always Daniel LaRusso. So like, I'd want to be the Karate Kid.
Nice. I like that. Next up, who is your favorite superhero?
Wolverine. I like vintage. I like leather. I like steel. I like motorcycles. I like things that were built really well and last a long time. And that's kind of Logan, I think.
That's definitely Logan. I love it. And last question, if you were a board game, what would it be?
Ooh, if I were the board game, it'd probably be Mousetrap. Make everyone work real hard to get a simple result, but at least they had fun on the way there.
I like that. I didn't know there was a game called Mousetrap, but I'm gonna have to look it up.
Oh, yeah, it's like a Rube Goldberg machine-based game from back in the day. Yeah,
that's
super
so
fun.
cool, man. I love it. Well, Dan, it was really fun talking with you. Guys, we have the links to connect with Dan in the show notes, and you can. What's the favorite place you like to be found on or connected to?
So I try to make it real easy on people. danhaslinks.com has all my links, so you can go there. And that's pretty much everything. My YouTube channel is my favorite place to be, which is just The Antipreneur, but that's on that link page too. Perfect. And then I do have a really fun little place, not to find me, but to find yourself. And it's just quiz.video. And that's where you can take a quiz and see where you're at on your video journey and get some really awesome assets and fun customized stuff just for where you're at. And that's about it. That link stack has all of my platforms and I hang out on all of them. So if you remember the word Antipreneur, you'll find me just about anywhere.
Fantastic. Well, Dan, thank you so much again for the conversation, the opportunity, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this Hacks and Hobbies episode. Junaid would love to hear from you, so please leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Visit hacksandhobbies.com to find additional information on the guest today, as well as the show notes.